Some people have said that ASEAN's decades-long strategy of what they call also constructive engagement has not succeeded. I'm wondering, you're following a constructive engagement strategy now. What does the U.S. bring to the table that perhaps ASEAN has not been able to do?
Well, we want to be in partnership with ASEAN. One of the first things I did as Secretary of State was to work toward the United States signing the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation so that we could be fully integrated into ASEAN. We're very supportive of ASEAN. And I think that we've also made clear we're not taking off our sanctions. You know, we want to engage, but we want to send a clear message that until there are changes inside Burma, we're not going to be able to help or support Burmese society and provide the kind of benefits that the United States can provide, investment, trade, as Anna mentioned earlier. There is so much that we could be doing, which we will not do because we don't want to support the current government. But if we have a strong cooperative approach by both ASEAN countries like Philippines, which is our partner, our dialogue partner in ASEAN, and we send a message to China and India that have a lot of influence inside Burma that they should help us support the kind of changes toward democracy that would benefit the Burmese people, I think we can slowly but surely make progress. I'm not going to predict it'll happen in a year or a couple of years, but I think if you look back on history, the engagement over time and the openness to listen and support those inside a society who are trying to change make a big difference. You know, before I came to Asia, I was in Berlin for the 20th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall. That did not happen overnight. That took many years. There were a lot of very brave people who stood up for human rights, who stood against the oppression of communism, and it built. And, you know, Pope John Paul had a huge role in giving voice to human rights against communism. So it started in the shipyards of Gdansk in Poland in 1980. It grew across Eastern Europe and slowly but surely brought a wall down. So I think you have to be committed. You can't blow hot and cold. We can't be involved one day and then withdraw the next day. You have to stay committed and you have to stay connected to the people who bravely fight for human rights and democracy, and that's what we intend to do.
But the world today is a very, very different world from when you were First Lady, so all of these things have changed. The U.S. is involved in conflicts that are very difficult, including in the southern Philippines, where counterterrorism and counterinsurgency operations in the Philippines, in Iraq, in Afghanistan. Just in Afghanistan, ma'am, we've had worsening situation there, the UN pulling out. I guess what lessons has the U.S. learned in terms of dealing with situations where terrorists are operating inside insurgency situations?
Well, I think there are many lessons, but one of the most important is that the people themselves have to be willing to stand up against terrorism. I mean, what we just heard from the young man who was speaking earlier, that conflict cannot be permitted to intimidate people. As hard as that is, you know, there is absolutely overwhelming evidence that in Afghanistan, the people there do not want to see the return of the Taliban. They know that what happened to them in the past, young girls being taken out of school, women unable to go for medical assistance, you know, being essentially imprisoned in their homes, denied their human rights. The kind of arbitrariness that occurred on a regular basis with, you know, stonings and beheadings and all kinds of terrible abuses. Nobody wants to go back to that. But people have to be given support to stand against it. And that's really what counterinsurgency and counterterrorism is about. You know, we're not interested in the United States of staying in Afghanistan. It's a country that we want to see defend itself. So the most common comment that we hear from around the country is from people who say, we want your help to enable us to defend ourselves, and then once we can, we want you to leave. Well, that's exactly what we want. Whether it's in the Philippines or Afghanistan or anywhere that terrorism is trying to intimidate people. It's a small group of people who try to impose their will on the great majority of people through the kind of brutal behavior and intimidation. And people need to stand up against that. People of faith, people in governments, people in business, in civil society, people need to say, no, there is no justification in any faith for this kind of action, and we will not permit you to determine our future. So the United States wants to be a partner for those who are willing and able to stand up for themselves, and that's what we see happening in the Philippines.
Secretary Clinton, it's my turn. My name is Pinky Webb. Mine is a very simple question. Americans have long enjoyed equal opportunity, equal rights. When do you think the United States will have its first female president?
Well, I'm probably the last person you should ask, because I certainly tried. I hope that... I hope that that happens for a lot of reasons. It was very significant historically when our presidential nominating campaign was between a woman and an African American. I mean, that was such a great symbol of our country, and I was, very proud to see Barack Obama inaugurated as our president, and very honored to work with him and his administration. But the Philippines is ahead of us. You've had 2 women presidents. So I really should ask you, what's the secret here? Because it's quite a tribute to your society that you are choosing people on the merits in a democratic process. And I think that, that will come to pass in our own country. Really, the equality between men and women is one of the most important unfinished challenges in the 21st century. Because women and men together have to be committed to a future of opportunity and prosperity and peace and progress. And in countries that do not provide support for women to be empowered, to make their own decisions, to have an education, they do not succeed in today's world. They can be a negative force, but it's very hard for them to be a positive force. And therefore, I think that it's not only electing a woman president, but it's making sure that every child, boy and girl, have a chance to fulfill their own aspirations. And that's what I think you are trying to do here, and that is certainly what we are committed to doing in the United States.
Thank you, Secretary. And we will again take a question from one of the students here in UST. Her name is Jackie Chan. And I'm
no
serious.
relation to the actor.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, that's quite a name.
Good morning, Madam Secretary.
Good morning.
I would like to ask, what is the major, do we have any, or you could say, the major changes we can expect for the foreign policy agenda of the U.S. under the President Obama administration?
Well, I think that there have been a lot of changes in our approach and our openness and our willingness to reach out to people with whom we do not agree. Certainly the President on the very first day signed an order to close Guantanamo, which was a very strong action that symbolized a change from the prior administration. Our outreach to Russia, to China, to other countries that we think we have to be working with, not against, for the good of the world. We're trying to find positive cooperation, not competition in the political arena. There'll be plenty of competition in the economic arena that we're going to be pursuing, but we want to find areas of common agreement where we can work together. We have made it clear that human rights and democracy are very important. We define it broadly. We happen to think that looking at climate change is not only an environmental issue, but a human rights issue. Because certainly if we don't protect our planet, we will undermine the lives and the livelihood and the rights of many people living with us together on this wonderful earth.